Hello, my name is Sarah. Life as a nurse is never dull, and being a mom of two keeps me on my toes every day. I switch roles from caring for patients to nurturing my kids, especially my teenager, Lily. At 16, she's at that age where boundaries are constantly tested, and every no feels like a challenge. Despite the occasional teen drama, I've always believed in fostering a home environment built on honesty and accountability. One crisp Thursday evening, after a long shift at the hospital, I returned home to the usual chaos, dinner half prepared, homework papers scattered everywhere, and Lily glued to her phone, texting nonstop on the couch. It wasn't until I went to my bedroom to put away the day's tips that I noticed something was off. My wallet felt lighter. A couple of $100 bills were missing, the kind of money you don't just misplace. I walked back to the living room and casually asked, "Lily, have you seen some money I left in my purse? It seems to be missing." Lily barely glanced up from her phone, her voice hesitant. "Oh. I meant to ask you about that. I needed some cash for a school project." "You took it without asking, Lily." My tone was more of disappointment than anger. She sighed a little too dramatically. "Mom, it was urgent, and you were at work. I was going to tell you. That's not how we handle urgent matters, Lily." "We don't just take things," I replied, trying to stay calm. "You're grounded for the weekend, no going out with your friends." "But that's so unfair," Lily protested, jumping to her feet. "It's just money, and I was going to tell you." "It's not about the money, Lily. It's about trust and respect." The argument escalated as her protests grew louder, but I stood firm. Grounding her felt like a mild punishment for breaking trust. Later, as I prepared dinner, trying to shake off the weight of our confrontation, John stormed in. His face was dark with anger, a look I knew all too well. "You're grounding her for taking a little cash? Seriously, Sarah?" John's voice was steeped in disbelief as he threw his keys on the table. "It's not about the amount, John. It's about honesty and consequences," I countered, feeling the tension rise between us. "That's just your way of controlling her, like you try to control everything in this house." John scoffed, pacing back and forth. I sighed, trying to keep my cool. "This isn't about control. It's about teaching our daughter the right values." John scoffed again. "Oh, and you're the perfect role model. Grounding her over every little mistake." "Every little mistake." Lily admitted she took the money without asking. "That's not a little mistake, that's stealing." I stopped him in his tracks and glared. "And you think you're perfect? Never done anything wrong." John shot back. I shook my head, frustrated. "This isn't about me. Why do you always make it about anything but the issue at hand?" "Because you make everything about rules and punishments. Maybe if you weren't so harsh, she wouldn't feel the need to hide things from us. Or maybe she would understand boundaries and respect if her father supported her mother in disciplining her when it's necessary." John's face turned red, his breathing grew heavier. "You're turning my kids against me, Sarah. You're painting me as the bad guy. Because I don't jump on your strict parenting bandwagon. Nobody is turning anyone against you, John. You're doing that all by yourself by undermining me in front of them. That's because you're unreasonable," he shouted, his voice echoing off the walls. "You want to control everything and everyone. That's not true, and deep down, you know it. I'm trying to be a responsible parent, John." "By what? Alienating your daughter? You think she's going to trust you after this?" His words stung, and I felt a pang in my heart. "I'm her mother. It's my job to teach her right from wrong, and it's my job to protect her from your extreme measures." "Extreme? Teaching our daughter that actions have consequences is extreme now?" John's voice rose, and he looked like he was about to explode. You're impossible. And you're not helping by arguing with every decision I make. I shot back, and you're not helping by undermining everything I do. Suddenly, his hand flew out, striking me across the face. The force knocked me back, and pain radiated from my cheek. For a moment, there was stunned silence as we both realized what had just happened. I touched my cheek, the sting was sharp and immediate. You hit me, I whispered, disbelief and anger mixing in my voice. John's eyes widened, perhaps surprised by his own actions. Sarah, I didn't. You did. I interrupted, my voice trembling. You just hit me. Our younger son, David, peeked from behind the hallway corner, his eyes wide. Mom, are you okay? I quickly wiped my face, trying to shield him from any more of this ugliness. Yes, honey, I'm fine. Go back to your room, please. David hesitated, his gaze shifting between John and me. David, please, I urged, my voice softer. Reluctantly, he turned and disappeared back into his room. Turning back to John, I found my voice, firmer and more determined. This can't go on. You need help, John. You can't just. He cut me off, his voice breaking. Sarah, I'm sorry. I don't know what came over me. Sorry isn't enough this time, I said quietly, the resolve building inside me. This changes everything. As John stood there, looking lost and confused, I knew that this moment was a turning point. I needed to protect myself and my children, no matter what that meant for the future of our family. Sitting in the break room at the hospital, I poured my heart out to Melissa, my colleague and closest confidant. The walls, adorned with health posters, felt like they were closing in on me as I recounted last night's horror. John hit me, Melissa. Right in front of David, I whispered, the words heavy with shame and disbelief. Melissa's expression hardened. This has gone too far, Sarah. You can't let him get away with this. I know, but I feel so lost. It's like I don't even know who he is anymore, I admitted, the confusion and hurt swirling inside me. It's not just last night, is it? There have been other signs, haven't there? Melissa's voice was gentle, coaxing the buried truths out of me. I nodded, memories flooding back. There were times when he'd lose his temper over nothing, times when he'd decide things without asking me, convincing me it was for the best. And you believed him because you wanted to keep the peace, Melissa concluded. Exactly. I thought they were isolated incidents, but now, seeing them all together. I trailed off, the pattern too clear to ignore. Melissa leaned forward, her resolve palpable. You need to document everything, Sarah, every incident, no matter how small it seemed at the time. Taking her advice to heart, I started gathering every piece of evidence I could find. I spoke to Lily and David, who reluctantly shared their own observations of their father's erratic behavior. Lily confessed, he always said it was our little secret, not to upset you with the small stuff. And by small stuff, he meant his bursts of anger. I pressed gently. Lily nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. I didn't want to make things worse, Mom. Realizing the extent of John's manipulation, I felt a surge of protectiveness. This ends now. We're safer knowing the truth. I dug deeper, finding emails where John had belittled my concerns about family finances or decisions about the kids' education. Each email, each testimonial from my children, added to the growing dossier of John's controlling nature. Back at work, I shared my findings with Melissa. She pored over the documents, a furrowed brow showing her concern. This is more than enough for a strong case against him, Sarah, whether it's for custody, a restraining order, or whatever you decide you need. I just want to keep my children safe, I said, my voice firm with newfound determination. And you will, Melissa assured me. You're doing the right thing. Gathering all this shows you're not just reacting to one bad night. You're responding to a pattern of behavior that's harmful to you and your kids. Empowered by Melissa's support and the evidence laid out before me, I knew I was on the right path. I knew what I had to do next. The road ahead would be tough, but for the first time in a long while, I felt like I wasn't walking it alone. The truth about John, once obscured by the facade of a temper barely kept in check, was now starkly clear. With that clarity came the path forward to protect my family and end the cycle of manipulation and fear. Armed with the truth and a folder thick with evidence, I confronted John in our living room, a space that had seen both the joys and shadows of our family life. "John, we need to talk about what's been happening," I began, my voice steadied despite the turmoil inside. "This can't continue, not just for my sake, but for our children's." He looked at me, wary but defiant. "What are you talking about, Sarah?" "The manipulation, the anger, the assault," I said, laying the papers on the coffee table. "It all ends today." He scoffed, glancing at the documents. "You think you can just end things, just like that?" "Yes, John." Just like that, I was firm, my resolve unshakable. "I'm filing for divorce, and I've spoken to a lawyer. Everything, your actions, your words, they're all documented." John's face paled. "You're serious?" "Very serious," I replied. "I've tolerated enough for the sake of what I thought was a partnership, but that's not what this is." As the reality settled in for him, I continued, "I've also shared everything with the people who needed to know, your colleagues, our neighbors, not to slander you, but to protect myself and our kids." "You wouldn't dare," he said, his voice a mix of disbelief and anger. "I already have, and the community has been more supportive than you think," I added. The strength of the collective backing me felt empowering. In the following days, John faced the consequences. His workplace conducted its own inquiry, and the disdain from our community was palpable. Friends we had known for years looked at him differently. Whispers followed him around, and his professional reputation took a hit from which it wouldn't easily recover. During this time, I worked on securing a stable and peaceful environment for Lily and David. The local community center provided resources, and neighbors who once only greeted us in passing came forward with meals, words of support, and offers to help with the kids. One evening, sitting in the quiet of a home that no longer housed fear, I reflected on the journey. The peace was new, delicate but promising. I watched Lily and David playing in the yard, their laughter a balm to the many wounds we'd endured. I realized then, looking at their carefree smiles, that this was what liberation felt like. It was not just the absence of John and his oppressive shadow, but the presence of community, of hope, and the reclaiming of my own strength. In that moment, I knew we were going to be okay. Better than okay, we were going to thrive. The struggle had been harrowing, the decisions painful but necessary. As I watched my children play, I felt a profound sense of triumph. This wasn't just a victory for me but for Lily and David too. We had escaped a cycle of toxicity, and while the road ahead would have its own challenges, we would face them as a family of three, supported by a community that had shown us we were not alone. John's downfall was of his own making, his actions the architect of his demise. As he faced the cold reality of his choices, I embraced the warmth of a new beginning, surrounded by love and support. For the first time in a long time, I looked toward the future with hope, not fear, confident in the knowledge that we had not just survived but were finally free to live. That brings us to the end of Sarah's journey as she rebuilds her life with her children and finds support in her community. It raises an important question about handling toxic relationships, especially when they're within the family. What would you do if you were in Sarah's position? Would you take the same steps or handle it differently? Please share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. It's crucial to talk about these situations openly to help others who might be facing similar challenges. Your input can make a big difference, And if you found this story compelling, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more discussions like this. Your support helps us keep these important conversations going.